Deputy Tyler Hale's hand slammed against Ava Kane's backside. Hard, deliberate, full of entitlement. Laughter rippled among the officers standing by the patrol car. One muttered, "Guess she ain't from around here?" While another shook his head. Pretending not to see, Tyler grinned, the type of grin born from power and impunity. "Welcome to Silverwood Heights," he said, pulling out his phone to record her reaction. Ava didn't flinch. She turned her head slightly, her calm gaze cutting through his smirk like glass. "Are you finished?" she asked, her tone low and steady. He chuckled. Not even close. Then he hit send, uploading the clip to a private group chat called Silverwood Kings. 87 men received it within seconds. Businessmen, judges, deputies. Every one of them laughed, thinking they'd just witnessed another notch in their circle's ritual of dominance. None of them realized they'd just filmed their own downfall. The pearl necklace around Ava's neck wasn't jewelry. It was a mic, feeding every sound, every word, straight to a secure FBI channel. What began as a slap meant to humiliate would soon unravel the entire empire that had rotted this town from the inside out. Before diving into this story, where are you watching from? Drop it in the comments, subscribe to the channel, and give me a like, because what happens next will leave you speechless. Ava Kane didn't speak again. She simply turned her eyes toward the massive glass mansion behind Tyler, where men in suits watched from tinted windows, laughing. She knew each of their names. She'd memorized their faces, their habits, their weaknesses. For 6 months, she had been gathering evidence under the FBI's Ivory Protocol, posing as a real estate consultant investigating money laundering through luxury estates. Her goal was to expose Sheriff Logan Hale, the man who ran Silverwood Heights like a kingdom, his deputies like soldiers, his son Tyler like an untouchable prince. The FBI had already mapped 312 suspicious property transfers tied to his office. What they didn't know, until this moment, was just how deep the corruption ran. That slap wasn't just an act of arrogance, it was proof of culture, proof of control, and now, evidence. "Turn around," Tyler ordered, stepping closer. His voice carried that smug, rehearsed tone of someone who thought the badge on his chest was a crown. Ava turned slowly, watching the way his fingers hovered near his gun belt, more out of performance than necessity. "You're under arrest," he said. "For what?" she asked, voice steady. "Trespassing," he answered, "and solicitation." The other deputies chuckled. "Come on, Tyler," one said. "Don't make it too obvious." Tyler didn't care. He snapped the titanium cuffs around her wrists with deliberate force. "Watch your tone," he said. "You're on private property. Sweetheart." Ava didn't respond. She let him push her toward the patrol car. She'd read his file. 12 complaints, all buried by his father. 5 assaults, no suspensions. 4 sealed settlements. 1 expunged rape case. Men like Tyler believed fear was power. But as she felt the metal bite into her wrists, she wasn't afraid. She was calculating. Her heel pressed lightly against the pavement, activating the silent transmitter built into her shoe. 2 soft pulses, enough to tell her handler she'd been compromised. But protocol required restraint. No backup, not yet. Inside the patrol car, the air was heavy with the scent of gasoline and cheap cologne. The divider's glass was scratched, the seats torn. Tyler turned around, still smirking. "You've got some attitude for a trespasser," he said. Ava's voice was calm. "You've got some arrogance for a deputy on camera." He laughed, assuming she meant his phone video. "Yeah, sweetheart. I make good TV." "No," she said softly. "I meant mine." He frowned, unsure what she meant. The pearl mic glowed faintly for half a second, catching the shift in his tone, the confusion that would later become evidence. The ride to the station took only 7 minutes, but every second mattered. Tyler talked, boasting about how his father owned this town. "You see those houses?" he said, pointing out the window. "Every one of them pays protection money. We keep their secrets. They keep ours." Ava listened, eyes blank. Mind racing. He didn't realize he was confessing. She'd caught men like him before, but never one so stupidly sure of himself. When they pulled into the Silverwood Sheriff's Station, she saw what the reports had described, a black glass fortress with tinted windows and no external cameras. Soundproof walls. A building designed to hide what happened inside. Out, Tyler said, yanking the door open. She stepped out quietly. Sign this, he ordered, handing her a clipboard. The paper read, prostitution, trespassing, resisting arrest. You really should read the room before you come here, he said mockingly. We don't like outsiders. Ava's jaw tightened, but she kept her tone even. I'm starting to see that. He grabbed her arm, guiding her down the corridor. Where are you taking me? She asked. Holding cell, he said. Don't worry, it's soundproof. Nobody will hear a thing. In the hallway. She caught a glimpse of another deputy, Mara Quinn, watching from behind a half-open door. Their eyes met for a second. Ava saw hesitation there, maybe guilt. Mara looked away. The metal door clicked shut behind them. Inside the small concrete cell, there was nothing but a metal bench, a drain, and silence. Tyler leaned against the frame, arms crossed. You know, he said, you don't look like the type that scares easy. Ava looked up. I don't scare at all. He tilted his head, smirking. We'll see about that. When he left. She let out a slow breath. Her wrist throbbed from the cuffs, the skin torn. She reached for her heel, pressed the latch, and removed the tiny blade hidden inside. A backup plan. The kind the Bureau didn't officially authorize but never discouraged. She dragged the blade across her wrist, not deep enough to wound, just enough to bleed. 3 drops. A pause. 3 more. A code. Her signal for distress. Somewhere. In a quiet van parked miles away. A receiver picked it up. 3 drops meant she was alive. 6 meant, they know. Ava sat back, her head against the wall, her voice calm in the silence. You wanted a show. Deputy, she whispered. Let's give you one. Outside. Tyler laughed with the other officers, showing them the video again. None of them noticed the small light on the security console blinking red. The silent trace of a transmission already reaching the Bureau's Denver field office. Within hours, the footage would leak. The names would surface, and the town of Silverwood Heights would be on fire. And it all began with that one slap. The cell was cold, lit by a single fluorescent strip that hummed like a dying insect. Ava Kane sat on the concrete floor, wrists cuffed in front of her, the sharp edges of the titanium biting into skin already raw from the drive. Her white dress, once flawless, was streaked with gray dust from the station floor. She didn't move, didn't speak. She was waiting. She knew how these men operated. The slap was only the beginning. What came next was the real punishment. The silence, the isolation, the fear. Sheriff Logan Hale entered without a sound. Tall, gray-haired, and broad-shouldered. The kind of man who had once worn his uniform with pride before power rotted him from the inside. He carried a manila folder in one hand and a smug half-smile in the other. Ava Kane, he said, flipping through papers he didn't need to read. No record, no prints, no address that checks out. You must be new in town. She didn't respond. He crouched in front of her, his voice calm, almost fatherly. You've got 2 choices. You sign these papers, prostitution and trespassing, and walk out by morning. Or, he tapped the folder, his smile widening. We leak what we found on your phone, the private photos, the messages, all those names in your contact list. People will think you sell more than real estate. Ava's lips twitched, not from fear, but from disgust. You think I'm here because I got lost? She said quietly. Logan's eyes narrowed. I think you're here because you don't know who runs this place. He stood up, motioning to the deputy outside. Leave her here. No food, no water. Maybe by nightfall she'll be smarter. The heavy door shut, the sound final and echoing. Ava leaned her head back against the wall, closed her eyes, and focused on her breathing. Every agent has a breaking point. Hers had been years ago, in a shipping container in Jakarta, when her sister's final breaths filled the air through a phone line she couldn't trace since that night. Pain didn't scare her. Silence did. She looked at her wrist. The small cut had dried, the message sent. But she needed more. She needed proof of life. She pressed her thumb against the hidden seam of her left shoe, releasing the tiny blade again, slowly, deliberately. She cut into her wrist, shallow enough to control, deep enough to mark. Blood dripped to the concrete in rhythm. 3 drops. Pause. 3 more. Each sequence pulsed through the embedded sensor in her heel, a coded SOS to her handler. Then she waited, whispering to herself. 3 drops means alive. 6 means they're moving me. Hours passed. No one came. The lights never dimmed. She could hear muffled laughter down the corridor, men joking, boots scraping, a door slamming, then footsteps, softer this time. The small window in the door slid open, and a woman's voice spoke quietly. "You shouldn't have talked back to him." Ava opened her eyes. The voice belonged to Deputy Mara Quinn, young, tired, and trying to sound tough but failing. "I didn't," Ava replied evenly. Mara hesitated, tray in hand. "Water," she said, slipping it through the slot. Ava reached for it, her cuff clinking softly. Mara looked down and saw the blood. "What did you do?" she whispered. "Made a call," Ava said simply. Mara's hand trembled, eyes darting down the hall. "You shouldn't play games with them. You have no idea who you're dealing with." Ava studied her, the nervous flick of her eyes, the faded ring mark on her finger, the way her badge tilted slightly to one side. "I know exactly who I'm dealing with," she said. "Do you?" Mara didn't answer. She set the tray down and turned to leave, but Ava spoke again, quieter this time. "How old's your son?" Mara froze. "What? The boy?" Ava said softly. 5? 6? He's got a scar above his eyebrow. Playground accident. 2 months ago." Mara's breath caught. "How do you—" "Because I've been watching them watch you," Ava said. "They've got cameras everywhere except your house. You made a deal, didn't you? Logan threatened custody. And now you're trapped in his system." Mara's hand gripped the door frame, her eyes glassy. "Stop," she whispered. Ava leaned forward, voice steady. "I can get you out, but I need that USB." Mara's face went pale. "What USB?" Ava smiled faintly. "The one you took from the evidence locker, the one you hide under the floor panel in the locker room, same one Tyler's been looking for." Mara shook her head, panicking. "You don't know what you're talking about." "You're right," Ava said, leaning back. "I don't know everything, but I know you didn't join this department to protect men like them. I know you stayed because you're trying to keep your boy alive." Mara looked at her for a long time, then slammed the window shut. Ava exhaled. The silence returned. Hours later, the door opened again. 2 deputies entered, one carrying a tablet, the other a set of zip ties. "On your feet," one said. "You're being transferred?" "To where?" Ava asked. "Black Hollow Mine," he replied, tightening the ties. "Sheriff wants you buried where no one can find you." Her pulse slowed, not from fear, but focus. Black Hollow. She'd read about it. A closed mine 4 miles out, abandoned after a collapse killed 11 workers. The perfect place for bodies to disappear. They dragged her through the corridor. Mara stood at the far end, watching. Their eyes met for a split second. Ava said nothing, but her gaze spoke clearly. Now or never. In the back of the truck, the air smelled of oil and old metal. The deputies laughed about weekend plans. Ava sat still, replaying her options. Handcuffed. No weapon. 2 guards. 1 chance. When the truck slowed near a checkpoint, She shifted her wrists, feeling the small tear in the cuff joint. Titanium was strong, but not perfect. The keyhole ridge was narrow, sharp. She angled the blade fragment she'd hidden under her nail, a backup piece, and twisted. One click. The cuff loosened slightly, enough to give her motion. She waited for the right bump in the road. When the vehicle hit a pothole, she leaned hard, slamming her shoulder into the guard's ribs. He cursed, turning to shove her back. In that moment, the door latch clicked from the outside. Mara. The door cracked open just an inch, and something cold hit Ava's palm, a USB stick wrapped in electrical tape. "Everything I stole," Mara whispered. "Make it count." Then she slammed the door shut before anyone noticed. Ava closed her fist around it, heart pounding. The truck rolled on, back at the station. Logan Hale poured himself another drink, unaware his empire had just begun to unravel. On the monitors behind him, a red blinking icon flashed, a silent alert from the cell Ava had bled in. He didn't notice it. He was too busy watching the video his son had recorded earlier, laughing at the moment he'd called, the slap that started the weekend. To him, it was just another day of control. To Ava, it was the beginning of the end. By midnight, the truck turned off the main road, heading toward the abandoned mine. The night was silent except for the hum of tires on gravel. Ava looked up at the dark silhouette of the mountain and whispered, "You wanted to bury me. Let's see who walks away." Her wrists bled. Her mind sharpened. She had the key, the evidence, and the will to survive. The next move would be hers, and when she took it, the men of Silverwood Heights would finally understand that justice doesn't whisper. It bleeds. The truck rattled down the narrow dirt road toward Black Hollow Mine, its headlights slicing through the dark. Ava Kane sat shackled in the back seat, wrists raw from the titanium cuffs, eyes fixed on the faint flicker of light outside. The two deputies in front, Tyler Hale and another named Briggs, joked about how deep the mine went, how nobody ever came back from that hole. Tyler smirked at his own reflection in the rearview mirror. "You're quiet back there, sweetheart," he said. "Don't tell me you finally learned some manners." Ava said nothing. Her pulse was steady, her mind sharp. Every word, every gesture was calculation. The USB Mara had slipped into her palm was tucked in the lining of her sleeve, pressed against her skin like a secret heartbeat. She knew she'd only get one chance to use it. One moment when arrogance would blind them long enough for her to move. When the truck stopped. The smell of old coal filled the air. The mine entrance stood ahead like a wound in the mountain. Black, silent, forgotten. Tyler got out first, stretching lazily. "End of the line," he said, pulling her from the back. The night was cold, stars buried under heavy clouds. "You got any last words?" he asked. Ava's tone didn't change. "You're not smart enough to be scared yet." He shoved her forward, laughing. "We'll see about that." Inside the tunnel, their flashlights cut across the jagged rock walls. The deeper they went, the colder it grew. Water dripped from the ceiling, echoing like distant footsteps. Ava memorized every turn. Left, right, slope, ledge, if she made it out alive. She'd need this map, back at the station. Deputy Mara Quinn sat alone in the locker room, her hands trembling around a photo of her son. She'd done it, given Ava the USB, betrayed her department. There was no turning back. She knew if Logan found out, she'd lose everything. She looked at her phone. A message blinked from an unknown number. "You did the right thing. Wait for signal. Trust no one." Her heart pounded. Whoever sent it knew everything. Inside the mine. Tyler's flashlight beam caught an old shaft elevator covered in rust. "Perfect," he muttered. "We drop her here. Seal it. No one ever finds her." He tossed a rope toward Briggs. "Tie her up." Ava didn't resist. She let them think she was beaten, but her right wrist, already slick with blood, slid slightly inside the cuff. Just enough movement. When Tyler leaned close, she whispered, You think your father can bury me?" He grinned. "He buried plenty. You should have stayed out of this," she said softly. "I was out," he said. "Then my old man pulled me back in." There it was, a flicker of weakness, the resentment, the hate he carried for his father. Ava saw it instantly. "He controls you," she said. "Even now. You don't even realize it." Tyler's eyes hardened. "Shut up." "You hate him," she continued. "You've hated him since the day he called you a coward in front of your men." He grabbed her by the collar. "You don't know what you're talking about." She leaned close enough for her words to cut. "I know exactly what breaks you." Briggs looked uneasy. "Tyler, let's just do this and go." Tyler shoved Ava against the elevator gate, furious now. "You don't get to talk about my family," he shouted. "You don't get to." Before he finished, she twisted her wrist, pulling free one hand, slamming the heel of her palm into his throat. He stumbled back, gasping. In the chaos, she grabbed the blade hidden in her shoe and slashed the rope at her wrists. Briggs reached for his gun, but she kicked it from his hand and sent him crashing into the rock wall. The flashlight spun across the ground, its beam landing on Tyler's face, red, angry, terrified. Ava pointed the blade at him. "You should have stayed in your father's shadow," she said. He spat blood, laughing weakly. "You can't stop it. You think one woman can tear down Silverwood?" "No," she said, "but I can start the fire." She swung the blade's handle into his temple, dropping him cold. Ava took Briggs's radio, flicked the switch, and heard static. The channel was encrypted, local frequency. She needed to draw them in. She pressed the talk button and spoke calmly. "Unit 7, this is Hale, target neutralized, moving to secondary site." Silence. Then a crackle. A male voice answered. "Copy that. Deputy, bring the body. Sheriff wants confirmation." Ava smiled faintly. "Tell him he'll see it soon." She dropped the radio, grabbed Tyler's keys, and ran. The tunnel ahead opened into a maintenance shaft lined with steel ladders. She climbed, her bloodied hands slipping but not stopping. Behind her, the echo of boots followed. More deputies. They'd heard the commotion. She had minutes, maybe less, at the surface. She burst through an old service exit, lungs burning from the cold. The forest stretched before her, endless pines, the faint hum of wind, the first sign of dawn on the horizon. She could hear sirens now, distant but closing in. They'd find the truck soon. She pulled the USB from her sleeve and tucked it inside the lining of her dress, securing it under a seam. That drive was everything. Proof of corruption, money laundering, and the names of 87 men in the Silverwood Kings network. Losing it wasn't an option. Back in the mine. Tyler regained consciousness, coughing, spitting dirt. His radio crackled again. "Status report. Hale." He grabbed it, voice shaking. "She's gone." Logan Hale's voice came through, cold and controlled. "Gone where?" "She attacked me, took Briggs out. I'm going after her." "Negative." Logan snapped. "You stay there. We'll track her from the drone grid. Don't make this worse than it already is." Tyler dropped the radio and screamed into the empty tunnel. Furious. He hated being treated like a failure. Hated that his father's voice still made him feel small. For the first time in his life, he realized the monster he'd become was just a reflection of the man who made him. Ava sprinted through the trees, her breath sharp in the cold. Every movement hurt, her wrists, her ribs, her lungs. But she kept running. The sound of engines echoed behind her. She reached the edge of a cliff overlooking the glacial river. The water below roared, white with current and ice. No time to think. She turned, saw headlights approaching through the forest. 3 cruisers, 1 drone overhead. She whispered to herself. "You started this, then jumped." The fall was brutal. The cold hit like knives, forcing the air from her chest. She fought the current, barely keeping her head above water, her arms burning as she kicked toward the opposite shore, on land again, shivering, gasping. She crawled through the reeds and collapsed behind a fallen tree. The forest burned faintly in the distance, smoke rising from the torches the deputies had used to light their path. Her white dress clung to her body, torn and blood-streaked, yet still intact. She pulled herself to her feet. Following the faint glow of headlights far down the road, a rusted sign read, "Junkyard, private property." She followed it. By dawn, she reached a row of broken trucks and an old RV parked among them. The radio inside crackled with static. A man's voice broke through, low, tired, but steady. "This is Jax Rivera, reporting from Silverwood. If anyone's listening, something's coming, and it's big." Ava smiled faintly, exhaustion catching up with her. She knocked on the RV door once, then twice. The sound of metal echoed, followed by the slow hiss of the door opening. A man with a prosthetic leg stared at her, disbelief in his eyes. "You look like hell," he said. "Good," she replied, stepping inside, "because hell's coming with me." The rain came hard that night, pounding the rusted roof of Jax Rivera's RV like a war drum. Ava Kane sat wrapped in a wool blanket, her hands trembling from the cold, steam rising from the cup of coffee Jax had handed her. He hadn't asked many questions. Not yet. He'd seen her face before, on a classified list sent years ago when he was embedded with federal forces in Kabul. "FBI," he finally said, his voice low, roughened by cigarettes and old shrapnel. "Undercover." She didn't confirm or deny, just met his eyes. "I need a place to work," she said. "A place where nobody asks who's coming or going." He leaned back, studying her. "You brought trouble," he said. "The kind that burns down towns." Ava nodded. "Then it's a good thing Silverwood's made of dry wood," while Jax patched her cuts with gauze from an old medic kit. Ava laid out everything she knew. Sheriff Logan Hale, his son Tyler, the bribes, the buried evidence, the USB drive Mara had risked her life to deliver. Jax listened, his one good leg bouncing restlessly, the other, a carbon prosthetic, gleaming under the lamplight. "You're telling me the sheriff runs a network out of a gated paradise, laundering millions through fake real estate deals, and the Bureau doesn't have a clue?" he asked. Ava looked up. They had a clue. They ignored it. She reached into the torn seam of her dress and pulled out the USB, setting it on the table between them. "This is the proof." Jack stared at it like it was a live grenade. "If that's true," he said, "you're already dead." Outside. Lightning flashed through the pines, revealing the silhouette of a black SUV parked at the edge of the junkyard. Ava noticed first. "We've got company," she whispered. Jax moved fast, snapping off the lamp, reaching for the old shotgun by the door. Ava peered through the crack in the curtain. Two men, both in plain clothes, moving slow, deliberate, scanning with flashlights. "Sheriff's men?" Jax asked. "Worse," Ava said. "Bureau internal." She'd seen the gate before. Federal posture, tactical calm. Nolan Gray sent them. Her voice hardened at the name. Deputy Director Nolan Gray, her former mentor, the man who had trained her in deception, loyalty, and leverage. The same man who had sold her operation out for $45 million. Jax's knuckles tightened on the shotgun. "You want me to take the shot?" Ava shook her head. "No, we need them alive." She slipped off the blanket, adjusted her torn dress, and took position by the window. As one agent stepped closer, his flashlight beam cut across her face for half a second. She saw the hesitation. He recognized her. That moment of shock was all she needed. She slammed the door open, grabbed the barrel of Jax's shotgun, and fired into the air. The men dove behind their SUV. "Federal Agent Ava Kane!" she shouted into the night. "Stand down, or I release what's on the drive." Silence, then a voice answered, low and uncertain. "Ma'am, you're a fugitive." "No," she said coldly. "I'm the only one telling the truth." The standoff lasted less than 2 minutes, when headlights approached from the main road. More SUVs, heavier units. Ava made the call. "We can't hold this," she told Jax. "We need distance." They bolted out the back, into the maze of rusted cars. Rain and thunder drowned their footsteps. One flashlight beam swept past, catching her sleeve for a split second before vanishing. They reached the edge of the yard where a small trail led down toward the riverbank. Jack stopped, panting, his prosthetic legs sinking into the mud. "Go," he said. "You've got the drive. I'll slow them down." Ava shook her head. "You won't make it 2 minutes." "Then give me a reason to." He shot back. Ava hesitated, then handed him a small flash drive, a duplicate of the USB, encoded with the same files. "If I don't make it, you get this to the Denver courthouse. Judge's name is Ramona Kellis. She's clean." Jax nodded once. "You're trusting a journalist with your life." "No," Ava said. "I'm trusting a soldier who came home and still fights." They split paths, Ava into the trees, Jax toward the river. Moments later, a gunshot echoed, then another. Ava didn't look back. She moved through the darkness, following the smell of smoke and gasoline until she reached a narrow road lined with abandoned maintenance shacks. That's when she saw her chance. An old patrol cruiser, empty, engine still warm. She slid inside, hot-wired it, and peeled away from the scene just as more headlights broke through the storm. Her hands shook on the steering wheel, but her eyes stayed forward. The windshield wipers beat in rhythm with her heartbeat. Each mile she drove was borrowed time. Back at the junkyard, Jax had taken cover behind a stack of scrap metal, firing warning shots to keep the agents pinned. "You think you can bury this story?" he yelled into the rain. "Go ahead. The world loves a cover-up," one agent shouted back. "You're aiding a fugitive." Jax laughed darkly. "So was your boss when he took the money." The next shot hit close, grazing the metal inches from his shoulder. He ducked, reloaded, and whispered to himself, "Come on, Kane, make it count." Then a sharp whistle cut through the rain. 2 short blasts, one long. It wasn't from the agents. It was her signal. Ava had made it out. Jax grinned despite the pain in his leg. "Good," he said. "Now it's your turn." Nolan. Ava drove until dawn, the storm fading behind her. She stopped at a gas station off Highway 70, empty except for a sleeping attendant and a flickering light. She cleaned her hands in the bathroom sink, staring at her reflection in the cracked mirror. The woman staring back looked nothing like an FBI agent. Hair matted, bruises along her jaw, eyes hollow but alive. She splashed her face with cold water and whispered, "You're not done." Then she pulled out her phone, one of the encrypted prototypes still linked to the Bureau's internal network, and sent a message to a number she'd memorized years ago. "Gray, I'm still alive, and I have everything." Within 30 minutes. Her phone buzzed with an incoming call. She didn't answer. She wanted him to know she'd seen it. The fear would spread faster than the truth. As she refueled the cruiser, she noticed a teenage girl watching her from across the lot, small frame, camera bag slung over one shoulder, eyes too aware for her age. The girl approached cautiously. "You're Ava Kane," she said, almost whispering. Ava froze. "Do I know you?" "Elena Santos," the girl replied. "I filmed what they did. To that girl. The patrol car." Ava studied her, realizing the name from Mara's whispered confession. "You have it?" "Every second," Elena said, pulling a small drive from her bag. "Tyler Hale, 17-year-old victim. It's real." Ava's chest tightened. "You need to come with me," she said. "Now." They left the station before the sun fully rose. The storm clouds lifted, revealing the distant silhouette of Silverwood's mountains. The town still sleeping, unaware that its secrets were about to ignite, in the passenger seat. Elena clutched the camera like a lifeline. "Why are you doing this?" she asked. Ava glanced at her. "Because someone has to." By mid-morning, they reached an abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of Denver, one of Jax's old safe houses from his reporter days. Inside, he was waiting, limping but alive. "You made it," he said. Ava smiled faintly. You too. She placed the USB, Elena's footage, and a stack of paper files Mara had stolen on the table. This is everything, she said. Now we make it public. Jax loaded the footage onto his old broadcasting rig, connecting through encrypted satellite. You're about to light up every news feed in America, he said. Ava looked at him, her face unreadable. Good, she said. Let them see what justice looks like when the mask comes off. Outside. Thunder rolled once more, distant this time, not from the sky but from something larger, inside the warehouse. The first video upload began. Tyler Hale's laughter, the slap, the victim's screams, then the names, the bribes, the transfers. Silverwood Heights would never be silent again. The upload had worked. The footage was out. Within minutes. Jax's broadcast had been mirrored by 2 independent journalists and 1 anonymous server in Iceland. The first 10 seconds alone, the slap, the laughter, the sight of Deputy Tyler Hale grinning into his own camera, were enough to ignite outrage across the country. Ava watched from the corner of the warehouse, arms folded, exhaustion painted across her face. She didn't smile. She didn't celebrate. She just waited for the reaction. The inevitable response that would tell her if they'd done enough. The old laptop hummed with the strain of bandwidth. Jax cursed under his breath as comment counters exploded into the thousands. Elena stood behind him, holding her breath as she saw her name credited on the lower corner of the feed. Footage provided by Elena Santos. The girl's hands trembled. They're going to come for us, she whispered. They already have, Ava replied quietly. Outside. Sirens wailed in the distance, echoing through the morning fog. Jax switched to a secondary line, routing their signal through decoy servers. We've got about 10 minutes before they triangulate, he said. That's enough. Ava answered. She opened a worn leather folder Mara had given her before the arrest. Paper trails, witness statements, payment records linking the Hales to Nolan Gray's offshore accounts. She placed them one by one on the table, the evidence forming a map of corruption that stretched far beyond Silverwood Heights. This isn't just a town problem, she said. It's federal. Jax looked up. Then why hasn't anyone in D.C. stopped it? Ava's voice hardened. Because the man who was supposed to sold it. She glanced at the clock. It's time. They moved fast. Elena downloaded the files to 3 separate drives. Jax drafted the headline for the release. Inside the Ivory Protocol, how a sheriff sold his town and the FBI stayed silent. Ava made a call using a secure line. When the voice on the other end answered, she said only 4 words. Denver Courthouse. Today, noon. Then she hung up. By the time they loaded the car, the news had already spread nationwide. Major networks played the clip on repeat. Hashtags flooded every platform. The governor's office issued a statement of grave concern. The Justice Department remained silent. And in Silverwood Heights, Sheriff Logan Hale stood in his office, jaw clenched, watching the footage on his monitor. His son's voice filled the room, laughing, taunting, calling her sweetheart. His reflection stared back from the glass wall behind the video, pale and shaking. You stupid boy, he muttered. His phone rang. It was Nolan Gray. Contain it, the deputy director ordered. I can't, Logan said quietly. It's already in the wind. Ava's convoy reached downtown Denver at 11:45 a.m. Protesters were already forming outside the federal courthouse. Students, reporters, former victims of the Silverwood network holding handmade signs that read, Justice for the Forgotten. The air felt charged, electric. Jax adjusted his prosthetic leg, pulling open the passenger door for Elena, who was clutching her camera like a shield. You don't have to go in, he told her. Yes, I do, she said. It's my footage, my voice. Ava led the way, her white dress washed pale by the noon sunlight, still torn from the forest but defiant. As they climbed the courthouse steps, Federal marshals met them halfway. "Agent Kane?" one asked cautiously. "Former agent," Ava corrected. "I'm here to file a motion. Inside." The courtroom buzzed with media and officials. Judge Ramona Kellis presided, composed and deliberate, her eyes sharp as Ava approached the bench. "Miss Kane," the judge said, "you're entering evidence without clearance. Explain yourself." Ava laid the USB on the desk. "This drive contains direct proof of systemic corruption within Silverwood County, implicating Sheriff Logan Hale, Deputy Tyler Hale, and FBI Deputy Director Nolan Gray in the obstruction of over 300 criminal cases." The victims were silenced, evidence destroyed, and federal oversight compromised for profit. A murmur rippled through the room. The judge's brow tightened. "You're aware of the consequences of this claim?" "Fully," Ava said. "But I'm also aware of the consequences of silence." By the time the footage played on the 300-inch screen, you could hear a pin drop, the slap, the laughter, the sound of a young girl's voice screaming from inside a patrol car, then the documents, bribes, transactions, case deletions, all projected for the world to see. Mara Quinn entered the courtroom midstream, pale but resolute, carrying her own stack of signed affidavits. She walked straight to the witness stand. "I was there," she said. "Everything she's saying is true." Her voice shook but didn't break. "They made me destroy evidence. They threatened my son." The judge ordered recess, the gallery exploding in noise, reporters rushing to call their editors, cameras flashing, 100 questions firing at once. Outside, the courthouse steps filled with hundreds more. People who had once been too afraid to speak now stood shoulder to shoulder. Signs rose, chants started. No more kings, no more silence. Jack streamed the entire event live, his feed cutting between the crowd and the bench. Ava stood beside him, her gaze steady but tired. "You did it," he said. "No," she replied. "We just opened the door." An hour later, the first arrest warrant went public. Federal agents swarmed the Silverwood Sheriff's Office. Logan Hale tried to leave through the back entrance but was met by his own deputies, now under federal command. He raised his hands slowly, his voice quiet. "Tell my son, I tried." But Tyler never heard it. He was already in custody, face down on the asphalt, screaming that he'd been set up. Across the city, Nolan Gray's office was raided. He wasn't there. He had fled, leaving behind encrypted accounts and an untraceable flight plan. The chase had begun. Back in Denver, Ava watched the first live news coverage roll in. Her name was everywhere now, some calling her a hero, others calling her a traitor. Elena sat beside her, silent, overwhelmed. "You okay?" Ava asked gently. The girl nodded, tears slipping down her cheeks. "I just thought it would feel different." Ava gave a faint smile. Justice never feels clean. By nightfall, the courthouse steps glowed under floodlights. The crowd still gathered, singing softly as reporters filed updates. Jax leaned against the railing, his prosthetic leg clicking with each movement. "You know they're not done," he said. "There'll be fallout. Retaliation." Ava nodded. "There always is." She looked toward the city skyline, where thunder rolled low in the distance. "But for the first time," she said, "they're the ones running." The world had seen what Silverwood Heights really was, a sanctuary of power, now exposed. Yet as Ava stood there under the darkening sky, she felt the weight of what was coming, the trial, the threats, the reckoning that had only just begun. But for tonight, the truth had broken through, and in a world built on silence, that alone was revolution. The Denver federal courthouse was overflowing by the time the trial began. 18 days that would grip the entire nation, 42 witnesses, 300 gigabytes of exhibits, and 12 hours of televised cross-examination were about to decide whether Silverwood Heights was just another corrupt town or a symbol of how deep the rot went. Ava Kane stood before the jury in her torn white dress, a reminder of the day everything began, the slap, the cuffs, the humiliation, Now she faced her abusers not as prey, but as proof. Cameras rolled, pens scratched, the hum of live broadcast filling the air. The judge's gavel struck once, echoing like a warning. By the third day, the world stopped breathing. Elena Santos took the stand, 19, nervous, clutching the small drive that had risked her life. Her fingers shook as she pressed play. The courtroom filled with the sound of a girl screaming inside a patrol car, the faint laughter of Tyler Hale in the background. No one moved. Even the defense couldn't look up. The clip was 1 minute, 27 seconds long, but it felt eternal when it ended. Silence settled so heavy it seemed to bend the air. Elena wiped her eyes, her voice cracking as she said, "That girl didn't have a choice. I'm giving her one now." The jury's faces hardened. Logan Hale turned away. Tyler slouched in his chair, jaw clenched, pretending not to hear his own voice echo through the speakers. That day ended early. The judge called recess, her eyes wet. Outside, crowds began chanting for justice, candles burning along the courthouse steps. Day 7 belonged to Deputy Mara Quinn. She walked in pale, her badge pinned to her jacket, a trembling hand holding a photo of her son when she swore the oath, her voice barely carried. "They told me if I didn't follow orders, I'd lose him," she said, "so I lied. I destroyed files. I let monsters walk free." She paused, eyes finding Ava across the room. Until she showed up. She reminded me that fear doesn't raise a child. Truth does. The courtroom fell silent again. One juror wiped a tear. Another folded her hands tightly. Mara broke down mid-testimony, sobbing uncontrollably. The judge allowed a recess. Reporters captured every second. By evening, the world knew her name, not as an accomplice, but as a mother who finally fought back. Day 12 cracked the case wide open. Jax Rivera rolled to the witness stand, his prosthetic leg squeaking with every step. He looked rough, unshaven, eyes red from too many sleepless nights. He placed a stack of documents on the table. "These," he said, tapping them, "are wire transfers from Nolan Gray's private accounts. $45 million in bribes to shield Silverwood's empire." Gasps filled the courtroom. Nolan Gray, the Bureau's own deputy director, sat stone-faced, his jaw twitching as the numbers appeared on the giant screen. $5 million to the Hale Foundation, $3.4 million to Silent Pines Development, $36.6 million offshore, untraceable. "You taught me to follow the money," Jax said, staring directly at Gray. "So I did." The defense objected. The judge overruled, and by the end of the day, the entire Bureau's leadership was under scrutiny. The media called it the Ivory Exposure. Day 15, the showdown everyone had waited for. Ava took the stand to face Logan Hale. He was gaunt now, hair gray at the edges, eyes hollow but still venomous. The prosecutor's questions were sharp. "Sheriff Hale, do you deny involvement in the disappearances of the 12 women listed in the Black Hollow report?" Logan smiled faintly. "There's no proof of burial." Ava rose, walking slowly toward him. "You buried them in the mine," she said quietly. He met her gaze, that same smirk creeping back. 12 jurors won't believe a whore." Gasps rippled through the courtroom. The judge slammed the gavel. "Mr. Hale!" she barked. Ava didn't blink. "You just gave them all the proof they needed," she said, voice steady. The jury stared at him, not as a sheriff, but as a coward hiding behind arrogance. He looked down, realizing too late that the empire he built on fear had crumbled in front of him. The final day came with a storm outside, gray skies pressing against the courthouse glass. Reporters called it Judgment Day. The jury filed back after 4 tense hours. No one spoke. The foreman's voice shook as he read the verdict. "On all 87 counts, we find the defendants guilty." It was over. For a moment, the room was utterly still, as if the world needed one last breath before it exhaled. Then chaos erupted, reporters shouting, victims crying, applause breaking through the tension. Logan Hale sat motionless, staring ahead, lips barely moving. Ava heard him whisper, "The mind swallows everyone." She stood, looking at him one last time. "Not this time," she said quietly. Tyler Hale was dragged from the courtroom screaming that it wasn't his fault. Nolan Gray sat slumped, hands covering his face as agents escorted him out. Mara Quinn wept openly in the gallery, clutching her son. Jax Rivera filmed every second, his voice trembling as he narrated the moment that history turned. When Ava stepped outside, the courthouse plaza was packed with thousands, holding signs, waving candles, chanting her name. But she didn't raise her hands or smile. She just stood there, letting the sound wash over her. To her, this wasn't triumph. It was release. The fight had taken everything: blood, sleep, trust, even faith. But the truth had survived. As snow began to fall lightly over Denver, she whispered under her breath, "Justice isn't a place, it's a fire, and I'm the match." That night, headlines screamed across every network: Hale convicted, the Ivory reckoning. Within hours, new indictments followed. Mayors, judges, real estate moguls, men who had believed themselves untouchable. Federal task forces mobilized. Victims came forward by the hundreds. For the first time in years, the system seemed to shift. And while Logan Hale's final words echoed in the public imagination, Ava Kane understood what they truly meant. The mind swallows those who descend into darkness and stay there. She, however, had climbed out, bruised, scarred, but unbroken, carrying with her the light that would ignite a movement. The storm had passed, but its echo remained in every corner of Colorado. The courthouse lights had gone dark, the cameras packed away, the crowds dispersed. Yet what had begun in the silence of a slap now resounded through an entire nation. Ava Kane stood on the courthouse steps at sunrise, her white dress replaced by a plain black coat, her eyes fixed on the horizon. Justice had been served, but the weight of it hung heavy on her shoulders. She knew the verdict wasn't an ending. It was the beginning of something much larger, something that would either heal or haunt the country. Sheriff Logan Hale was sentenced to 7 consecutive life terms without parole. 14 days later, he was found hanging in his cell. The same shoelaces he once used to lace his polished boots, now twisted into his final escape. His death didn't bring peace. It brought silence, the same silence he had used to control others. To the public, it was poetic justice. To Ava, it was unfinished business. Deputy Tyler Hale, his son, never made it past his first month in prison. 17 women came forward with lawsuits detailing assaults, threats, and rapes he had committed while wearing the badge. Before any case could reach court, he was beaten to death in the shower by 3 inmates who refused to name themselves. The news spread fast. Some called it karma. Others called it consequence. Ava called it what it was: the cost of unchecked power. Nolan Gray, once groomed for the U.S. Senate, saw his empire crumble overnight. His campaign donors vanished, his accounts frozen, and his name became a curse whispered in the halls of Washington. Investigators seized $120 million hidden in offshore accounts tied to bribes, shell companies, and consulting fees paid through the Silverwood network. Gray called it a witch hunt, but even his lawyers stopped believing him. He was finished, politically, financially, and historically. His betrayal would be remembered not as ambition, but as rot. The Silverwood Kings, 87 men who thought themselves untouchable, fell one by one. 62 were arrested, charged, and convicted. The remaining 25 took their own lives within weeks. Their estates were liquidated, their mansions sold at auction, and the proceeds, more than $1.2 billion, were redirected into a federal restitution fund for the victims their empire had silenced. Silverwood Heights, once a fortress of wealth, was now a ghost town. The Black Glass Sheriff Station was demolished. In its place, the people built a community justice center. The walls were white, deliberately white, a symbol that purity didn't come from privilege, But from accountability, Ava didn't celebrate. She never did. She refused interviews, awards, or public praise. Her focus was forward. Using seized funds and federal support, she founded the Ivory Task Force, a national unit dedicated to rooting out law enforcement corruption across 47 states. No badge above the law. Its motto read, "Within its first year." The task force reopened 312 closed cases and freed 46 wrongfully imprisoned people. Reporters called her a crusader. Politicians called her dangerous. Ava called herself what she'd always been, a servant of the truth. Jax Rivera turned the story into light. His documentary, The Fire Beneath the Badge, became the defining work of his career and earned 2 Pulitzer Prizes. His narration was calm, deliberate, and full of scars. "She didn't come to burn a town," he said in the final frame. "She came to remind it that fire purifies." His work reshaped investigative journalism, forcing newsrooms to confront what they'd ignored for years. The corruption that hides not in shadows, but in uniforms. Mara Quinn disappeared quietly after the trial. Her 5-year-old son received his long-awaited heart surgery, funded by the restitution program Ava established. She sent Ava one letter, handwritten and sealed with no return address. It read, "You didn't save me. You reminded me I could still save myself." Ava kept it in her desk drawer, her one reminder that redemption doesn't come from power, but from courage. Elena Santos, the 19-year-old who risked everything to film the truth, received a $1 million scholarship and a National Journalism Award. Her footage had exposed a crime, but her bravery had restored belief in truth itself. She went on to study investigative media, building a foundation to protect whistleblowers and young reporters from retaliation. Her first words at the award ceremony echoed Ava's own. "Justice is not loud. It just refuses to die." Months passed. Winter came. Silverwood Heights was no longer a secret on a map. It was a lesson carved into history. The forests regrew. The air cleared. And the rivers thawed. But the scars remained. Reminders that corruption doesn't vanish. It waits. Ava returned there one final time, climbing the rocky ridge above the town where the pine trees met the clouds, the same place she'd once escaped through blood and fire. The wind was sharp, her coat billowing, her white dress, the one from that morning, folded neatly in her hand. She reached into her pocket and pulled out the final USB drive. It contained everything, the footage, the files, the names, the evidence that had built and broken her life. She stared at it for a long moment, then struck a match. The flame flickered, caught, and devoured it. The smoke curled into the mountain air, dissolving into the same sky where this story began. Behind her, the rebuilt town shimmered in the distance, no longer ruled by fear, but by memory. She thought of Logan and Tyler, of Nolan and Mara, of Elena and Jax. She thought of her sister. Long gone but never forgotten. Every battle left a scar, but every scar left a lesson. Ava watched the last ember fade and whispered into the wind, her voice calm, certain, and eternal. "Justice isn't a destination, it's a fire, and I'm the match." And as the sun broke over the ridge, painting Silverwood Heights in gold, Ava Kane turned and walked away, not as a victim, not as an agent, but as the woman who burned down corruption and built truth from its ashes. The ivory reckoning was over, but its flame would never die. Thank you for watching this story. If this story moved you, please take a moment to subscribe, leave a like, and share it with someone who believes in justice.